Good morning, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Janet Calderwood. I'm a registered dietitian, and I want to welcome you to the Dietitian on a Mission. Again, it's really important when I think about nutrition information that people that want to live well get the right information, and they can get that right information from this show, The Dietitian on a Mission, because I have experts that come here from all over, and today it's a special privilege to have Sarah Krieger with me. I haven't seen her in a while, and she's an excellent dietitian, and I want to invite you again to come back soon.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I mean, she did come quite a drive today, but Sarah, thanks for being here. And
it's always a pleasure.
And you know, she used to be the president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics for our state.
Yeah, the Florida one.
The Florida state of Florida. And you know, she is an excellent resource for information. And we're going to put her website up in a little bit so that if you want to reach out to her, you can. But you know, we're going to talk about something today that I feel like people have probably heard the significance and the goodness of grains, but yet it just sounds like something rather mundane at this point, but we know how important it is. And when we think about grains, and especially some grains have been around for centuries, right?
Thousands and thousands of years. Yeah.
Yes. We call those what? Ancient grains?
We call them ancient.
Not dinosaur grains.
Right.
Right. So let's talk about what is it that you think is driving the boat with these ancient grains? They're sort of being more available. A lot of people don't know what to do with them, but why are they so important?
Well, for starters, though, there has been, I mean, grains are carbohydrates, right? They're a good source of carbohydrates. And so some people think, well, maybe I shouldn't be eating grains because they have carbs in them, right? But we know that there is so much nutrition in a whole grain, right? And so I'm thankful to the farmers, the people who are reintroducing something to Westerners, which is what we are, what other countries have been consuming for thousands of years. So what's new to us is, you know, historically part of, you know, so many other cultures.
Exactly. So when you think about ancient grains and whole grains, can you, like, you know, sort of like all carrots are vegetables, but not all vegetables are carrots. Can you explain the difference between maybe what an ancient grain is and how is that different from a whole grain or similar?
Well, ancient grains can be whole grains. Most of them are, right?
Right.
So the ancient part here, I do air quotes once in a while. Ancient grains really means that it hasn't been cultivated or changed too much in the last 100 years, which is awesome, right? And they're all whole grains, okay? But
give me some examples.
Okay, so this is why I had to write down, just so I don't mess it up and mislead.
Good, I'm glad you did.
Because some things, personally, I have not tried all of them. They have like more of a nuttier taste, you know, more of an intense taste. So if someone was raised on white rice, which is pretty bland, and then they're like, all right, we're just going to go 100% into the ancient grains, baby steps, because they're pretty intense flavor, which is good at the same time.
Yeah.
So farro is one, F-A-R-R-O, which I have tried. Very good. Again, nutty, like in the brown rice, wild rice, kind of, you know, intense flavor. Kamut, K-A-M-U-T, right?
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
I have tried that, but some of these, you know, grains that you're describing and the others that you'll discuss, they're not easily accessible. You may have to find them in specialty food stores because, again, most Americans or most Westerners aren't familiar with kamut or with, you know, some of these grains. And the thing is that when you think about America and the mixture of people we have here, it's wonderful to celebrate all the different cultures that of the people that are representative in our country, and having some of these are their, you know, cultural foods, so to speak, and then introducing them to us, because not only of the health benefits, but just like you said, some of them have great different tastes, and it puts a little bit more pizzazz back into your carbohydrate selections.
Yeah. Well, I encourage consumers to go to a restaurant, like if they see it on a menu, because you know that the chefs really know what they're doing, right? And I've been
We hope so.
Well, of course. And then So you taste it and you're like, wow, that tastes really good. And then you can ask, the chef where you get it. But you're right, you can go to specialty grocery stores or health food stores where they have it in bulk, and then you can, that's what I do. And then, or massive grocery store chains may have like a bulk section, and then you just try, like buy a cup or two. Don't
go crazy.
Spend $20 on a 5-pound bag if you're not
going to eat it,
waste it,
okay.
right? And then some of them can be turned into breads, like spelt. Okay.
Spelt. Okay.
We've heard of spelt, right? And so maybe you've seen it in a multigrain or, in a bread product. So, and then there's millet, which my husband we have chickens, and he says, you and the chickens, you guys eat like the same kind of grains
so it's
and
like
seeds.
Chicken feed?
Well, millet is part of a seed that, it's part of a mixture.
Chickens?
Yeah, they love it.
Oh, wow.
They love it. And amaranth and teff, which is another one that sometimes we'll see like in a bread product or a roll.
Barley.
Yeah,
Barley's been around forever, right?
Barley is funny because we always encourage our clients to shop like looking at the top or the bottom shelf in the pasta section, right?
Right.
Barley's always on the top. It is like so affordable. It's always there, but I'm like, look up instead of in the middle where you're going to see like the white products.
Right.
Right? So why not
You might
try?
have to look for these items. You can take your kids to the grocery store when you have an extra amount of energy on your hands and start searching high and low for all these different ancient grains.
That's right.
And it's actually fun because the more, as a parent, the example that parents can set to their children, kids get their eating habits from their parents.
Oh, yes.
And so let's set positive examples instead of, where you can find a certain hamburger on the menu board at a fast food meal, go to the grocery store, So all of these things are great opportunities to teach children as well.
I totally agree. Think about like couscous,
Couscous.
Did people even know what couscous was in our country 20 years ago?
Probably not.
Probably not. And now my kids get so excited, like, oh, couscous
Oh,
is
good.
buy
I'm
one,
so
get
glad
one.
we're having couscous for dinner.
Mine too.
Yeah, that's great.
know?
And so some of these things that you're describing, for example, like amaranth, I mean, these are things you can actually, back to the Bible days. There's things in
Absolutely.
the Bible like barley and amaranth and all these things. So these grains have been around for, like you said, a very long time,
Yeah.
hence the name ancient grains.
Yes.
And we know that with a lot of the cultures that utilize these grains, I mean, most of them contribute a great deal of nutrition to the diet. So tell us, you said that ancient grains are whole grains.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a whole grain and a refined grain?
So the whole grain, again, wanted to write this down just so we can just double check. The whole grain really hasn't been manipulated or changed. It
Okay.
hasn't been stripped away of the 3 parts, right? Do you have them
3
memorized?
parts.
3 parts.
The germ,
The germ.
the endosperm, and the bran.
That's correct.
So a whole grain equals 3 parts.
All 3, exactly. And what's really cool is that all 3 are very different, right? One has the carbohydrate, one has like the protein and the fat, and of
Okay.
course one has the fiber. And each part one has more vitamins and minerals. And so once you start taking any of those off, you're losing something, right?
Right.
So that's why it is important to choose like a whole grain instead of a refined.
Yes, and with refined grains, what's interesting is usually it just includes the outer starchy layer or the starchy layer, the endosperm, and so the valuable portion, we want you to get the biggest bang for your buck. But
Yeah.
if you're eating refined grains, then you're only getting 1 part of that 3-part kernel.
Right.
So, get the biggest bang for your buck, consume whole grains. We know there's tremendous research about the health benefits of whole
Yeah.
grains. Let's talk about some of those.
Well, just like fruits and vegetables, like you were saying with carrots, every fruit and vegetable is different for nutritional value, right? One has more potassium, one has more vitamin C. Same with the grains, right? One may have more magnesium, one may have more zinc. So again, as we know, eating a variety of all of them. If someone says, what's the best whole grain to eat? I say a little bit of all of them.
The one that you'll eat
Exactly.
is the best one.
Exactly. So in my family, whole grain bread is not popular, nor is whole grain pasta. So you know, we choose that we like brown rice, quinoa, we'll do different other whole grains. So if you find one and you're like, I hate quinoa, don't eat quinoa.
Yeah, don't eat it.
Don't
we
eat
don't,
it.
yeah, we don't want you to leave the table unhappy. I mean, we want you to, I guess the whole point of having the show is really to introduce to you, the viewer, some different opportunities for you to eat healthy by maybe expanding your intake on some of these grains, which are so beneficial health-wise. I mean, in reducing your risk for chronic conditions like diabetes and cancers and on and on. I mean, it's just endless.
Yeah, I have a whole list. You're
Tell
really
me,
spot on.
what's on the list?
Preach it, Sarah, right? So I guess the focus is like plant-based diets, right? We know that
Plant-based diets.
instead of saying, oh, vegetarian, we don't have to be vegetarian, but if we have our meals, you've probably done shows on the My Plate, you know, half of our plate, fruits and vegetables. Your viewers are very savvy in that.
Yeah, they've got that. We hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope
so.
that.
Only a quarter of our plate needs to be the grain. Okay, so when again, sometimes you know people think, well, they said eat more grains. That means I should have like 4 cups at every meal. That would be excessive, right?
Well, I will tell you, you know, I just returned from Guyana, and what a lovely country that is. For all my Guyanese friends out there, I say hello and greetings to you. They enjoy rice so much, and my big comment was to see if anybody actually recognized what the actual serving size of a serving of rice was, because most of them think 3 cups is about the serving size. So that was the big joke down there. I mean, they're all into agriculture and everything, farmers and things, so they need a lot of extra energy. But, you know, when we think, like you said, about that My Plate diagram and only a quarter of your plate being a grain, the serving size is about 1/2 cup. So there's opportunities to eat healthy, and but still recognizing that, you know, we don't want to overdo it.
With anything.
With anything, even something healthy.
Right, like carrots.
Just because it's healthy doesn't mean we need to, you know, just overdo it.
I agree. I mean, you can eat too much of anything. You know, your body will turn orange if you eat too many carrots or sweet potatoes. So,
do I look orange?
No.
Okay.
I
well,
just know some people that have in the past when they're trying to lose weight and like snacking on baby carrots all day. I'm like wow,
you're starting to look like
what
a
are you
carrot.
snacking on? I know, it's exactly. So same thing with the grains. I think the bottom line message is that the research is so strong, as you say, with the whole grains. Longevity, promoting longer life. You know, the hot cereal. My in-laws and my husband love a multigrain hot cereal that we grew up with in Michigan. And I'm like, wow, that's why they're living so long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one piece
It's
of the puzzle.
the secret to
It's one
living
piece of the puzzle.
long.
But you're right, decreased risk of diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Wow, those are the big 3.
And aiding in weight management.
Absolutely, which is all tied to all 3
All
of those.
those chronic conditions.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned, I'm going to back up here a minute because this is an important point. You mentioned the word multigrain. Okay, so a multigrain bread, for example, may have several different varieties of grains included.
Obviously.
Is a multigrain bread automatically a whole grain?
Excellent question, Janet. And
Thank you.
not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And why is that?
Why is that? Because it could be a multi-grain with a refined grain, right? So you could have some whole
of
grains.
these grains that are a different selection of grains, but that have actually been refined.
Yep.
And then, so even though maybe it's a 7-grain bread wonder, right? If it's 7 refined grains, you're not getting that benefit of having the whole grain, you know, all those 3 parts.
Correct.
So you really, what can people look at? Do they just say, oh, the bread is brown, it must be a whole grain? We can't always go by that.
Right.
Tell us why.
So there are a couple easy things to look for on a package, right?
Okay.
There's a whole grain seal. We should have had an example. It's yellow. It says whole grains. You can't miss it, right? Right on the package. A product has to be at least 51% or more
To
of the
say
grain.
made with whole grain?
Correct.
Okay.
And we want to try to get approximately 48 grams a day. That's just a very, very general guideline. So if you see a product has 8 grams per serving, then you want to consume that, right?
But, so what Sarah is saying is that, looking at the label, looking for things that say made with whole grain, a better thing that you could even do if you wanted to kick it up a notch is looking for things that said made with 100% whole grain flour or something like that.
Yep.
So the goal is about, like she said, 48 grams of whole grain a day. And it will tell you on there. If it just says made with whole grain, chances are you're getting some whole grain in there, at least 50%, but not entirely. But if you want to really improve your health, or if you're looking for opportunities to do better, the 100% whole grain would be a good thing to look at. So would you say then if something, let me give you some phrases. So if something says 100% whole wheat bread, would that be 100% whole grain?
Could be.
Yep.
It could be.
So you're looking for that word whole too, right?
Yeah, we're looking for whole, and again, it could still be, if it says 100% whole grain,
that would be
then you're
a
good.
whole grain.
Then you're good.
And whole wheat, if it says 100% whole wheat, that is a whole grain.
Right.
If it said something like degerminated or like degerminated corn, then that means, think of the word degerminated. We know that germ, the germ is part of that kernel. So if it's degerminated, that means there's one part missing. So that would not be a whole grain. If you hear the term pearled barley, again, that's not going to be whole grain barley. So, it gets a little tricky with these words. And then sometimes people think, well, if it's brown, it must be a whole grain, right?
Which takes me back to when my dad had a pretzel shop when I was in high school, and he bought caramel color by the gallons from Gordon Food Service.
Caramel color.
Yeah, there's your brown.
Right there. And so just because, don't just go by, now we know, right, you and I both know that brown rice is a whole grain, right, and it's brown.
Right.
As opposed to white rice.
Right.
Right? And so that is, you can look at the color brown and determine that. But just because something's brown, and this doesn't have anything to do with it, but people think brown eggs are healthier than white eggs.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's brown.
Correct.
So the big thing, and it's not caramel colored, it's just coming from a different hen.
They dye and then caramel color.
But anyway, the point is, you can't always go by the color.
Right.
Because even now, there are some varieties of whole wheat flours that are actually white. It's a white wheat.
Yeah.
And it's a little more delicate for people that maybe don't eat whole wheat bread. I'm not a whole wheat bread type of girl, especially if you grew up my generation with the Wonder Bread, the soft white, moms were giving their children all this refined white bread because it was soft, and you could cut your sandwich in half or diagonal perfectly with that kind of bread. But we know that, we're missing out as years went by and with the research. So now I'm glad to see that whole grain is back in the spotlight. But there are some white wheat flours and there's some whole grain white breads. You just have to look in the grocery store carefully to make sure it's 100% whole grain.
Which is, then I encourage people to look at the ingredient list.
Ingredient list, yes.
Like brown rice, pretty simple to eat, to read that label, right? So if you're looking at breads and flours, just look at the ingredients, see what it really is.
And then, and something that might be easy for people is when you're reading the ingredient list, it can get pretty complicated. Sometimes there's just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. And I can pretty much guarantee you, if you have to go through 3 paragraphs to figure out if something's a whole grain bread, it's not, okay? Because it shouldn't be that difficult. I'll give you an easy example. Like if you pick up the Quaker oatmeal container, we know it says on there whole rolled oats, whole rolled oats as the first ingredient, right? There's like 2 ingredients and maybe something else, salt, I think. But So that's easy for people to understand. So that ingredient list, like you said, Sarah, that can be a great tool for anything that people are trying to figure out, especially even if they have food allergies and things.
Of course.
Okay,
of course.
now that leads me into this conversation about gluten-free whole grains. There's a lot of gluten-free whole grains.
There are. So again, it's important to eat a variety, even in the gluten-free category. Some, again, because there are nutrients that are a little bit different. And the quinoa, that we mentioned before, is actually considered like a pseudo grain or a pseudo cereal, right? Because it's actually a seed. However, the nutrition is very similar to the other whole grains, so that's why we would consider. So that's why it's gluten-free, right?
So quinoa, and just for people that are wondering how do you spell that, is the one that's spelled with the Q. So Quinoa. Most people that don't know how to pronounce it quinoa. But it really, and it has a complete set of those essential amino acids. So it's good for people that do follow plant-based diets, because it's, for people that are looking for opportunities to get protein in a plant-based source, that would be a good one.
Absolutely. And what I love about whole grains is you can make a whole batch at one time. With 3 kids and life, who wants to, if you're making brown rice, because most of these are pretty much cooked the same way. They take anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, right?
Okay.
So don't just do like a half a cup, and do that 3 times a week. The grains will last like 5 to 6 days in the refrigerator. You just take out what you want, reheat. So it's nice. And if you don't want to just have the same recipe, if you added, like tabbouleh, for example. Most
what
people
is
know
tabbouleh? It's cracked wheat,
it's
right?
cracked wheat. It's a whole grain.
Bulgur. Wheat.
Middle Eastern historically. And, you just add lemon juice and oil and garlic and parsley. Well, if you didn't want to have 10 quarts of this stuff, 5 pounds of it in your refrigerator, make the base, right? And then just add a little bit to, your other ingredients. And then maybe the next day you add some nuts like pecans or cashews or some dried fruit. So you don't get bored eating the same recipe all the time.
That's a good idea. So she's basically saying make a big thing, and then you can, alter the additional things that you put in there. That's very clever, because it's almost like you're getting several
different
options.
meals,
Work
flavors.
smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
That's a good idea.
And I think most people are familiar with doing that with like steel cut oats, which for me they cook forever, right?
They take a long time.
Yeah, you can't, if you don't have time on a Monday morning, you would cook that on a Saturday or Sunday, and then just, again, if you wanted to add applesauce one day and then the next day you added peanut butter, so again, same thing.
And let me just say something. So if you are someone that does enjoy the steel cut oats, or you're just eating the regular oatmeals, rolled oats, the difference is the steel cut oats are the blades are used to cut it differently, but they're both whole grains, and so, depending on your personal preference, some people like those steel cut oats because they're chewier, they enjoy that better, but they do take a lot longer to cook. So.
They do.
And then what about, so you mentioned maybe adding dried fruit and nuts and things like that, and you said that most of these whole grains are really cooked the same way as you would a rice.
Right.
And so, anytime that you would add rice to something, you could really substitute one of these whole grains.
Absolutely. Cook it the same way as you do rice for starters, and just kind of see what your base flavor is. Whole grains don't naturally have a lot of salt or fat, right? So you have to add a little bit just for some flavor. But again, the opportunities are endless to make it like a main meal. You could add like an egg to it, or scrambled eggs, like a fried rice, if you will, and vegetables, or you could have it as a side to, pork tenderloin or chicken breast, keeping it more traditional American, where you have vegetables, meat, and your grain. So many options for people, right?
What about, Sarah, now, for the next couple minutes, can we discuss maybe some of these myths that are going around that, whole grains, this wheat that we're eating is adulterated, and on and on and on. What comments do you have to defend the whole grain industry?
So the ones that you're speaking of are not the ancient grains, right? They're the ones that we use much more often in the last couple hundred years. So wheat, of course, is
Wheat is getting vilified left and right.
Yep.
Oh gosh, don't ever eat wheat.
Don't eat wheat. Corn is another one, okay? So those are the two main ones that get criticized. And I don't like to put blame on anything, but there are some reasons. You know, I would say the internet provides a pretty intense platform.
Facebook scientific evidence.
Yes, exactly.
The Facebook community.
Yes.
Okay.
Celebrity influence. You know, whatever fad diet that someone is consuming. That, you know, all this information kind of trickles down. But sometimes even healthcare professionals will kind of get into that trap of, well, I read this or that. So it's so important for us to pay attention to the science because a lot of, like we're saying, these whole grains have been studied for different diseases.
And this isn't just 1 year, this is years and years and years of research that indicates these health benefits. And we want you to, if you're going to be here on this planet, on this earth, in Florida or wherever you are, to be healthy, to enjoy your life, to enjoy your food, to know that the foods that you're eating are providing you with a lot of nutritional benefits, and that it's something that you can enjoy.
Definitely. I think what people what the kind of trap they get into when they're trying to lose weight, be healthier, is that they tend to have like safe health foods. Maybe, okay, turkey on whole wheat pita for lunch, and then I'll have chicken and broccoli for dinner.
The same thing.
The same thing. And so it doesn't have to be that way. You know, we both know that. I personally love like different things. It drives my husband crazy sometimes. It's like, can't we just have like what you made last
meal?
No, we eat normal meals, but I love so much variety. Like if we have broccoli one week, it's like, all right, let's have eggplant, you know, and same with the grains. And so, you know, not everyone can be open-minded with trying new foods all the time, but the more variety you have, the more meals are interesting and the more you're invested in your health, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it would be great when you have a potluck with your church or something that you can be the one to bring the ancient grain.
I am the one.
And you can introduce this wonderful food that you've discovered, that you have actually created. Hey, I got this quinoa at the store, and now I mix this up for you, and let me tell you what you're getting. You're getting fiber, you're getting the essential amino acids out of this, and you know, and all of that. The more opportunities that people have to taste healthy foods that actually taste good, that will be a positive reminder for them to eat more of them. You know, and like Sarah said, be mindful that the portion sizes of these things, they're, you know, still standard, a half a cup serving. Thanks for being here. This show went by very quick. I want to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you here on CTN 10 next week.